Hello, and welcome to another edition of the Coach and Benway podcast. I'm Coach Red Pill with my co-host, as always, Dr. Benway. Dr. Benway, how are you this fine Saturday, and how's your week been?
Well, much like Mr. Kavanaugh's accuser, I don't like to fly. So I have after coming back from a cross-country plane trip, I'm a little upset. I can't handle it. The Senate should probably shut down as a result.
Yes, the whole nation should shut down because everybody needs their beauty sleep, as Kavanaugh's accuser obviously does. Well, we're talking about we're going to kick off with the Ryan Kavanaugh situation, which has dominated our attention, even though in the scheme of things it's a trivial event, but because there are actually other more important things.
Look, our last Weekly Bile, we ended. We if we didn't end on it, this was just percolating. The news had, it was a rumor, no name had been attached to it, and we were saying how obviously staged it was because it felt like Jodie Foster on the pinball machine and whatever the fuck that movie was called.
Accused.
The Accused. Of course it was called The Accused.
Yeah.
And then the more this kind of bubbled up, the more it really felt like it was taken from The Accused. It's like, let's get this plot and let's get it going. And it's amusing because it's fucking high school gossip all over again.
Well, there are a number of problems. The accused finally surfaced, and her name is Blasey Wood. Christina Blasey Wood, I think. Blasey Ford, rather. I don't care. It doesn't matter. Okay, she's some rando. Okay, we haven't seen her yet. She's supposed to be some professor of something trivial. And what happened was that, she claims that 36 years ago, when she was 15, she says that she was sexually assaulted by Kavanaugh in the presence of another guy. And also, this hasn't been reported that much. There was also a third guy who she said was like around in that area, in that party or whatever. Okay, so the friend of another man, and here's the thing.
What was it, Orson Welles?
Oh, well, the third man, it could be, But okay, so here's the story. It turns out Blasey Ford is saying that Kavanaugh groped her, threw her on top of a bed or something, or some piece of furniture, groped her up, and she resisted and ran away. And okay. And so number one, she says that Kavanaugh did it in the presence of this other guy. The other guy, who's a grown man, he says, bullshit, that never happened. I have no recollection, because he said it politely. He said, I have no recollection of that, and I have never seen Kavanaugh do anything like that. Okay. And according to this woman, this witness was right there watching. He was participating, and they were all drunk or whatever. And the guy's saying, he said, "I have no memory of it." And so they've been using that quote as sort of like it's a weasel word kind of thing. But no, it's just saying that it didn't happen, right? Kavanaugh, of course, is saying it never happened. The woman doesn't remember the year it happened in. She doesn't remember which house it was, which party, or anything else. She mentioned, like I said, a third man, and this third man has also just denied it, said, nothing of the sort ever happened. There's no evidence of any sort. There's no story here. She's just saying it. It's like me saying, I remember back in 1982 that, somebody assaulted me. Who it was, I don't know. When, I don't know, it's all just bullshit. It's just
I don't know. I don't know where it happened. I don't know under the exact circumstances. I couldn't recall the house or what it looks like, but I can tell you this: it dramatically affected every last decision of my life. All that stuff, and I finally looking at a photo of who this person is. I've never seen her up until literally this minute, and she looks like every lesbian gym teacher I've ever encountered.
Yeah, exactly right. Look, this is all bullshit. Her attorney, a woman named Katz, she is so up the ass of the Democratic Party. She's done fundraisers for Hillary. She donated or was part fundraiser for $25,000. It's that crowd. You know who this crowd is. They're just trying to torpedo this shit. And Chuck Grassley, the senator, the committee chair, said, okay, well, show up. That's the thing. They called her bluff. They called these people's bluff. And said, okay, show up. Talk to us. Tell us your story. Let's hear it. And now they're backtracking. First of all, they wanted an FBI investigation, which, of course, anybody who with even a cursory knowledge knows that, number one, the FBI cannot investigate this because it would be a local. It's a state crime. It's not a federal crime. So the FBI would never investigate this thing. There would be. They just want to delay. It's just an issue of delaying because they're sure that in November they're going to get the Senate seats. What they're not talking about, for instance, Feinstein played this. She got this letter in July and she sat on it for 6 weeks until she finally released it. She leaked it out because she's never actually shown the letter to the other members of the Judiciary Committee, and they've been clamoring to see this letter. It was just a whole issue of just trying to smear Kavanaugh and delay. I think it's really unconscionable because I think that everybody's pretty much in agreement that Kavanaugh is a straight shooter, straight arrow. Okay, on a familial, on a personal level, the guy is just, he's one of these typical, good Catholic Opus Dei kind of guys, who's always like good, he's a good family man and the whole thing, he's never hurt a fly, okay? The guy doesn't even have a fucking speeding ticket, for crying out loud, right? And this comes out of the woodwork, okay? Right at the 11th hour. I mean, what is this? It's just a delaying tactic, and it's so frustrating, and I think that Grassley has been playing this very well because he's just been calling their bluff one after the other. And he's saying, on Monday, we're going to have a vote. On Monday, we're going to have a vote. Do you think that there's going to be a vote?
Well, I would like there to be a vote. That's the best I could say at this point. I never let me put it this way. I never bet against the possibility of cowering and caving when it comes to politicians. Never underestimate that gut response that they have.
Yeah.
That being said, yes, of course they could potentially do it, especially when I see Mitch McConnell, of all people, say, we're going to fucking deliver. He's going to be sitting on the Supreme Court in the next few months. Trust me. Well, I don't like it when they say trust me, but at the very least, that's somewhat hopeful. What also is kind of amusing me in this whole smorgasbord of, okay, let's bring up all the other kind of past shit and accusations we can have against someone. I love that there's also now that what's his face, the Muslim who is the head of the DNC. He's also been more legitimately accused of
Ralph
sexual
Ellison.
abuse.
Yeah, Ralph Ellison. Yeah, that's a legitimate sexual abuse allegation. Yeah,
which is actually has police documentation and and everything, and then also Beto O'Rourke. The Keith Ellison, Ralph Ellison. I was about to say no, but it wasn't the man who wrote, who wrote those wonderful books. I'm like, no, don't distract me.
Sorry, Keith Ellison. My mistake.
But and now Beto O'Rourke has to talk about the fact that he left the scene of a car crash. Did somebody die in that crash? Or was it just
I don't know about that, but he left the scene of a car crash where he was drunk. Okay, yeah, okay, that and he left. I do believe. Actually, I don't know if it was by foot or by car. It doesn't matter. He left the scene of a crime that he committed, right? I mean, Jesus Christ, right? And his father, made it go away. Okay, that's the nasty part. Okay, that's the thing that gets everybody's like, ugh, It's not that he did something stupid when he was 22. When, by the way, it was when 22 you're old enough to know better. 16 you can get away with a lot. 22, no, you can't get away with shit. You're old enough. And this fucker was drunk, driving, got into an accident, and left the scene of the crime. And his old man made the whole thing go away. Oof, that's just nasty. I'm waking up. It's morning where I am, so I haven't yet seen the best clips, the highlight reel of the Beto O'Rourke, Ted Cruz mano a mano. I don't know if you've happened to see that yet.
Well, all I heard was that. Upon being asked about the car crash, I believe the phrase privilege might have made its appearance.
Yes.
Maybe even white privilege.
Yes, I hope so. Because that is that's the epitome of privileged behavior. Your old man.
It was a lecture on white privilege.
Yeah, exactly. So let's hope that he got what was the strung up on his own petard or whatever.
Here's the quotes. This is from Breitbart.
Mm-hmm.
I believe, yes, this is Beto. I can only tell you that I was able to have a second chance in my life. Was able to start a small business with a good friend in El Paso, blah, 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 I've made the most of what I could do with my second chance. Blah blah blah. What I do know is that as a white man in this country, that is a privilege that I enjoy that many African American women do not.
Oh God, he tried to pull it like that. Oh come on, you're fucking kidding me. That's just absurd. That's just stupid. You know, because he comes across as the biggest asshole. Oh man, I don't know.
In fact, what he's really saying is, please add another layer of that privilege if you can by me not only having done this, having gotten out of it, now having it thrown against me. I'm going to tell you, prove that you can fight white privilege by electing this man who I consider to be white and privileged to be your senator from Texas. That's some, what I don't know how many dimensions of chess you can get to, but I'm sure Stephen Hawking just shit his pants in his grave trying to figure it out.
Well, from what I understand, Ted Cruz was ahead 9 points before this debate. So I don't know what's what. I don't even know why we're worrying about this race if he was so far ahead. Is he that far ahead, or is that wishful thinking? I
actually just looked at the polls, or looked at a readout of the polls just a few seconds ago. I thought it was only about 4 points ahead, but I don't believe entirely what these polls are probably going to say one way or the other.
Yeah, but okay, going back to the Kavanaugh thing for a little bit, just to hopscotch back. I'm kind of curious as to whether people are seeing through this. The normies are just seeing through this and just saying this is a delaying tactic. This is all bullshit. And I'm wondering if women are seeing this because it's so obvious. And I don't know about you, but like whenever I've had some sort of traumatic event, I remember every little detail. For example, in 1985, 33 years ago, it was March of 85, I was in the middle of an earthquake. I remember every detail. I remember who I was with. I remember exactly what I was even talking about when it started. I remember, just every little detail of that event because it was, not traumatic. I don't want to put it in those terms because I thought it was fun as hell, but it was memorable.
Let's also put it this way. I mean, it was only a couple weeks ago that, what anniversary of September 11th is it now? God only knows how long.
17, yeah.
17 years. So, I mean, I can remember every last detail of when I heard that the attack happened. And because it was that kind of shocking to the system. I remember, what period of school it was. I remember what class it was. Yeah. I remember the exact feeling I had. I'm assuming that when you are raped that traumatically, you're probably going to remember it on that level.
Yeah, exactly.
That's my gut guess.
Yeah, exactly.
You'd either remember all the details or it'll be zero memory.
Yeah, and including zero memory of who did it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay, so this all seems absurd. On Zero Hedge, they've been floating the idea that maybe she's misremembering and thinking of some other guy who actually on the yearbook pictures looks exactly like Brett Kavanaugh. I mean, could be his twin brother. But who knows about that? That sounds like just...
It was Bill Clinton.
She had Bill Clinton did it?
What it was.
I think it's just absurd. I think that they should just... move on. Just move on. I mean, there's nothing to be gained by dragging this out. Come Monday, just do it. Just pull the trigger on the fucking thing and say, look, if you're not showing up on Monday, okay, well, then what are we supposed to do? Wait for you forever? Because she's also putting up all kinds of hurdles now because she exceeded okay. First, she wanted an investigation before. Then she's like, Kavanaugh talks first and then she talks, which is, just goes against everything in any kind of judicial process where it's the accuser first and the accused gets the chance to respond. Look, they are trying to smear the guy and destroy him. Because the thing is also, I read some piece that Andrew Sullivan tweeted out saying that basically the guy cannot withdraw now because his reputation would be destroyed. And there's nothing here, okay? This isn't like a job interview. This is like a major political nomination, and he was at the door of it, okay? I mean, he was like practically, trying on robes for the position. And the guy's a decent guy. I mean, there's never been even a whiff of anything before. I know I'm repeating myself. It just bothers me very much because I think that the guy is a decent man. And this kind of smear is so malicious and so bullshitty. And everybody involved in this is, a Democratic Party party affiliated. And, they're all fellow white people, and they're all Democrats. And they have no problem smearing the shit out of somebody and just wrecking their reputation over, just because they're afraid that he'll rule against killing more babies, It just bothers me so much. It just really, really bothers me because he's a nice guy.
To me, I frankly don't even care whether Kavanaugh's a nice guy or not. To me, the whole interesting sociological factor here is all of the peripherals on how we take this very clearly tactical event and do what we do best about it, talk it to death in terms of issues tangentially related. So, for example, I cannot tell you how many different articles, commentary videos, news snippets I've heard this week in passing, and I'm not frankly even looking for them or paying attention to them, about how, when you're when you are a woman who's raped, you fear to come forward with accusations because you will lose your job, and or people will hate you, and people will execute you, and all of these other things that I'm pretty sure rarely if ever happen. And and there's this, that, and the other. And I guarantee you, if you look at, even though I don't have the numbers, I'm willing to bet you significant money that when you stack up the people who have lost their job because they accused someone of rape versus being falsely accused of rape, it's the guys who are falsely accused who are more likely to lose their jobs than some bimbo who said something bad happened to me.
Yeah, exactly right. Look, there was some, the editor of Teen Vogue, I forget her name, she tweeted out, that I'm willing to pay the price to have, innocent men going to, having their reputations destroyed in order to end the patriarchy, right?
Well, that's funny, the logic, because she doesn't really, it doesn't cost her anything.
Exactly.
What price is she paying?
Exactly. Yeah, it's perfect.
That's like me saying, it's like, I'll pay the price to see 40,000 Mexican immigrants burn at the stake.
Yeah, exactly. I'm willing to pay the price
for the chance of one decent taco. I mean, that's the logic here.
Yeah, exactly right. And I think it's just absurd that these people are so cavalier with the reputations and the lives of others, and it shows basically fundamentally that they're evil people. It's no longer that they are politically motivated and they feel very bad about this. No, they're fucking evil. Okay, because it's getting to that point where they're doing things that are actively evil towards individuals for the sake of their ideologies. And, well, here's the next topic to discuss. Recently, we put up our James Woods recording, which, dear listener, if you're listening to us and presumably are a fan, we actually recorded that thing 3 months ago, and we've been just kicking it forward for various reasons. But it was a great show, and James Woods is a great guy. And we put it out last week, and lo and behold, James Woods' Twitter account got shut down. What the fuck? Well,
see, they're coming after you, or they're coming after us, I should say.
Yeah, they're coming after all of us.
We're gonna have to have a running tally of all the people whose lives have been ruined after featuring on our podcast.
Yeah, why? Because it was James Woods and who else?
Because of the timing. It's just James Woods
timing.
At this point.
At this point, so far.
What was fun? But the funny thing about it is, to your exact point, I know we recorded that a hell of a long time ago, and I always thought, I said to you, before you right when you were posting, I said, poor James Woods, he keeps getting kicked around.
Yeah, and he did. He got kicked around a little bit more.
Oh God, yeah.
Didn't he play Nixon?
No, he was in Nixon. He played Haldeman.
No, but I think that he played Nixon in some other movie.
No, he played Giuliani.
Giuliani? That's a Nixonian character, yeah?
Yeah.
Well,
yeah, he played Rudy Giuliani, and he played Dick Fuld, and he was the best Dick. He's the only good part of that fucking movie. So for those dear listeners who don't know, and I'll bring this up again. I'm glad we mentioned that, because I also wanted to bring something to your attention, news-wise. HBO made a movie after that Too Big to Fail book by, is it Aaron Ross Sorkin? Is his name?
Ross Sorkin, yeah.
Aaron Ross Sorkin, who, if you ever encounter him, is a sort of a feat journalist who covers Wall Street and is such a fucking sycophant.
Yeah, he's a suck up to Wall Street, just a total suck up. His book,
and I'm keep that in mind, as that's going to be the next story I'm going to talk about. They made a movie about it, and William Hurt played
Hank
Paulson, and Bill. I think
Billy Crudup played Geithner.
Billy Crudup played Geithner. Bill Pullman or Bill Paxton? No,
Bill Pullman played Jamie Dimon.
Jamie Dimon. I mean, it was a pretty decent cast. But James Wood is the best part because he's just fucking every because James Wood was always willing to play the asshole. On that, and he played it brilliantly.
Yeah.
And anyway, so it's funny to me, not even that James Wood got banned, because I know James Wood gets closer and closer to being an R guy type of fellow as the days progress.
Yeah.
But he got, from what I gather, I can't prove it, I just saw tweets back and forth about it. He got pulled down for reposting that meme you probably saw. I don't know if it was a real ad or a fake one, of three kind of,
soy boys.
Three soy boys of atypical not gender identity, but atypical, and you couldn't tell what ethnicity they had. There was the generic brown people with their mouths wide open with the soy smile, and said, I think the slogan in this ad was, "Make her vote count more, don't vote."
Yeah. Nobody knows if it was a meme or like a real thing. Okay.
Anyway, James Woods post basically an innocuous message saying, this could be fake or not, but I guarantee you people are doing that, and it's just so weird or so fucked up or whatever he phrased it as. It wasn't, nothing to write home about.
Yeah, but he didn't even use dirty language. His
even
tweet.
If he did, it wouldn't have mattered. Yeah. And he got pulled down for that. And it's not like, the tweet got pulled down, which is something they could just as easily do. They pulled James Woods down. Yeah. James fucking Woods.
Yeah, and over something so trivial. Okay, so number one, they're watching him like a hawk, and number two, the Overton window is shrinking radically. If somebody like that can say something so innocuous, really, and get pulled, what do you get pulled for exactly? Because his account is still up. Yeah. His account is still up. He can't access it. That particular tweet is gone, but there are a shit ton of copies floating around. Archive copies and snapshots. I mean, it's an actual fact that that's the tweet, and because that's the only tweet that's lacking on his timeline. He has got 1.7 million followers. Okay, and people like him. His commentary is funny. Okay, so him getting shit canned like that is going to piss off a lot of people, and it proves that there is a gross liberal bias that needs to be regulated. It needs to be regulated because it can't be that you have people, censoring conservative voices just because they happen to be conservative. And here's the other thing, and this ties in neatly to the next item that I wanted to talk about. You heard about the James O'Keefe thing? No,
I didn't.
The Project Veritas and their.
I know Project Veritas, but I don't know what he's in the news for now.
Okay, well, he got some people from the State Department, and they're basically saying, several people, and he recorded them basically saying that they're slowing down and ultimately kind to torpedo what Trump is trying to do. It's basically, he's saying that, the resistance is not just outside the government, it's inside the government. They were talking about how it's impossible to get fired from the federal government, and so they can do whatever they want, and that they're deliberately slowing down or going against his policies, against Trump's policies. And I think that this is really significant because this ties into the further point of Rod Rosenstein coming out. It's coming out, and he was contemplating the idea of recording conversations with Trump in order to use it to invoke the 25th Amendment. We're going into a weird, where we have literal fifth columnists inside the government now. It's like a cancer that's spreading. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I guess.
You're not as outraged as I am, I guess.
Well, it's like when it's the 50th take on it, it's hard for me to be motivated anymore. It's like after you get punched in the face about
enough times,
50 times, like what is the 51st time going to do to you at a certain point? And that was going to bring up my I was going to bring it up earlier. It was even before the James Wood thing. Do you ever get this vague feeling? Because I know in our rants we tend to say, the various ideological motivations of why people do the things that they do, and ban people or do level accusations against the other side for whatever reason. Do you ever actually get the sense that I'm getting now, which is actually, we may be giving them more credit than they're due if they believe in ideology? Maybe they're just nothing more than the kid it would encounter in your life who just likes to rip the wings off flies to see what happens. Do you ever think that you are dealing with people who are fundamentally operating on that level? Like, oh, I can make a guy like Brett Kavanaugh squirm a little bit. That fucking squeaky clean guy.
I
He's
heard
on the other side of me.
I heard a slightly different take on it. Similar, but a different take. Not that they're the kids who like to take the wings off flies, but rather that they're hall monitors. They're the hall monitors who really like their little bit of power because they were always powerless. And so when they get this little bit of power from up on high, they revel in it. And they want that power. And they want to suck up to the authority and punish the cool kids. That's the thing I got from it,
Yeah, there's what I guess what I'm getting at here is that the flavor and the tempo and the vibe of a lot of these things comes across to me as above and beyond ideology now. I think if it carries and resonates in the greater society, it's partly because of ideology and maybe a couple of other motivating factors. But that doesn't answer the question why this particular person is doing it as opposed to either another or whatever. Because they have to motivate themselves to do it. And I just have to convince myself that it takes a certain kind of person to revel in these certain these actions and characteristics. And I know it will get to it in a future podcast when we talk about the book. But that's also the vibe you kind of get from reading, so you've been publicly shamed.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I mean, that same kind of attitude is just the tone I'm getting. Like, for example, take of how Dianne Feinstein is operated throughout this whole equation. It's like, well, I got this fucking email, and I'm gonna tell the FBI on you, and all that other things. It's and I'm sure if you looked into her eyes and her face, she probably had that smarmy smile, like, I got you, Mr. Clean. She's probably not that weird that she would phrase it that way. Maybe she is. But yeah, you get what I'm saying here. There's that kind of the other, because it was all the grandstanding that was happening at this. I mean, remember when the two Tweedledee and Tweedledum of Kamala Harris and Cory Booker were doing their fucking things. You could always see on their faces that they love their fucking performance that they're doing. It's like it's the worst mixture of, to your point, hallway monitors and high school theater kids.
Well, there's something else that's really interesting is that now that I think about it, in the past, people who went to public office had actually held positions of leadership in society. It wasn't a career as it is now. And so people who had positions of leadership in the general society, in business, in the military, what have you, they knew power and they knew its limitations, and they knew when you had to be very careful with it. And they knew that it was easy to abuse power, and they tread carefully on that line between exercising power and abusing power. But the career politicians that we've had, frankly, in the post-war period, frankly, I would say starting with John Kennedy, these people who rose to positions of political power, the presidency and other posts, they did not hold power before. They were not powerful people. They went through a process to achieve power. And therefore, when they finally achieve power, they don't quite know how to use it. And they do stupid shit like, what's his name, the Booker guy, Cory Booker, is it?
Yeah.
Who made himself a fool with that grandstanding. Something that if he'd been like in a position of power when he was younger and tried something like that, he would have realized how stupid it was. But he didn't have that apprenticeship. He had to learn it on the job almost. And so all these people, they're exercising power, but they've never had power in the real world and affected people's lives directly by that exercise.
Well, let me
power.
phrase it this way. When on that front, think I'm sure a lot of our audience may not have been on this position, but think if you ever find yourself with the power to either fire someone at, like, let's say someone who works for you on your team, you have to fire them.
It's difficult.
You will soon realize it's not fun.
No.
And even if you in your heart of hearts, you know this person deserved it, and even if you think they're an awful person, it's like you know what you're doing very quickly, and you know what implications it's going to have on someone very quickly. The only people who get cavalier about it are the people who are either sociopathic or just frankly don't understand what the fuck they're doing.
Exactly right. I think you nailed it on the head, because it's the issue of firing people that really. Yeah, and the people who don't know shit from Shinola just casually fire people. They don't understand, or they don't want to understand, or don't have the brains to understand that when you fire somebody, you're destroying somebody's life for a little bit. Not forever. They'll soon pick themselves up. But still, for a period of time, you are destroying their lives, because people put so much value into their work. They spend most of their time at work. Okay, and so you're taking that away from them. And it's not to be trifled with.
Well, I mean, and that's the thing. It's this is, I think, the situation we're in. People may read this oddly in the President Trump era, but I don't think it's really. I think he's an exception to it. Ironically enough, I think most of our leaders are not really leaders; they're playing leaders. This is all it's a big community theater program. And I think a lot of the folks in the most expensive community theater program you could muster
ever made,
exactly. And the way that folks operate, they're not acting as people with power. They're acting as people who don't have power, trying to mimic what being a person with power is like. The joke on this situation is that the irony is that they actually do have power. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I've come up with an odd articulation, so I'll rephrase it again. It's like it was a phrase like, the mouse who thought he was the lion who thought he was a mouse but turned out to really be a mouse, or something like that. There's a way of phrasing it. It's like, you presume you're just acting at this thing that you're playing, but it turns out that the reality of the situation is you actually do become the thing you're playing.
Yeah.
Almost like the legend of in Kagemusha, the Kurosawa film. It's like the warlord has a body double, to distract people from him, and so they won't kill him. The situation is the real lord dies, and the body double has to pretend to be the lord to avoid chaos in the group. But by virtue of becoming the lord, even if he's playing at him, he realizes that he actually is exerting actual power. So he's pretending to be something that the reality is in the pretending he is the thing. And that's when you have this disastrous confliction of lack of true skill with the power to wield it, And
by the way, which movie was that?
Kagemusha, the Shadow Warrior. That was from 1980. Maybe that is the movie. There's no other name.
Yeah, I haven't. I'm not that familiar with his work. I saw Ran, which I thought was great, but I remember watching it and thinking of Lear instead of watching the movie. You know what I mean? And so I didn't really watch it properly. I should watch it again. But that's pretty much all of my experience. And I saw Seven Samurai, and to tell you the truth, I was just not enthralled by it. I know it's supposed to be a masterpiece and all the rest of it. But I just didn't, it wasn't my speed, and so maybe I'll just have to watch it again. Because I watched it when I was very young. And so when you watch stuff that when you're very young, you tend to view it in a different light, especially because of on the technical aspect of it. But anyway, going back to the situation that we're having now with all these people, we have this political theater going on, right? And the vibe I'm getting that I hope is the true vibe is that people are seeing through this as just bullshit. This past week of delays over the Kavanaugh nomination, it feels as if it's all bullshit because there's nothing there. The more you dig into this, at the end, it's just her word. She's just saying something. And I think that's the thing that people are finally landing on, that There's nothing there. There's no proof. There's no dates. There's no place. There's no nothing. Just that it happened. And how are you supposed to believe that? And
Well,
I think also,
you go back
sorry to interrupt. The last point. I think also they're terrified of putting her on the stand because there must be something about her that is just a turnoff.
Yeah, she's the fucking high school. I told you, the high school lesbian coach. That is what's going to do it. And the odds are, she'll just cave under cross examination very quickly. I mean, to be brutally honest about it. I mean, let's put it this way: this is all tied again to my notion that, like, after you've been punched in the face 50 times, the 51st punch isn't really going to do much.
Mm-hmm.
Remember, it would be one thing if this were to happen, I don't know, let's say in the early 2000s or maybe year one of Obama. But you have to realize this is after the whole Duke lacrosse situation.
Mm-hmm.
This is after the UVA rape on campus situation. This is after, pick your latest, publicly, notable false accusation story.
Yeah, the Jackie, the Rolling Stone.
Yeah, Jackie or whatever. You stack all that up, and you also stack up the details that you mentioned that we know people in the administration, directly inside the administration, and then the opposition in the Congress have made it very clear that they just want to do whatever they can to undermine the president. It's just very obvious at that point that you know what's going on. And let's even put it this way. And I think a lot of people who you would call, even though I hate the term, normies, would even see it this way. Even if what she said was true, let's give it as fact for the sake of argument. Even if that were true, they would still recognize it as primarily a politically motivated act and would still say, fuck you.
Yeah. So, okay, so let's move on from that topic. Briefly, I was named as one of the alternative influencers. There's been the James Woods situation, and now it's coming out that Google has been actively messing with its algorithm in order to downplay pro-Trump stuff. Okay, this is the news that's coming out. The Daily Caller and I think Breitbart are talking about it. Actually, I haven't seen.
Oh, I know it. So yeah. So this is it's a little bit tamer than that, but certainly worth talking about. Apparently, what was internal communications. I don't know if it was or it was a result of memos or like Google Hangout exchanges or what have you. But essentially, internal Google employees were saying like, how could we, manipulate the algorithm to promote left-wing causes over right-wing causes, or specifically to fuck with Trump? And they were, talking back and forth about it. I don't think, or at least Google's position was, look, they never actually touched the algorithm, and this is just people shooting the shit like they often do in companies. We're not going to reprimand them, and we're not going to do anything about it because we don't think it actually had any meaningful consequence. That in and of itself is a banal story of Google, But what's funny to me is that this is also paired with another Google leak, and the one that they're really pissed about, which means that it's really true. There have been other memos publicized that Google's senior executives, at least 3 of them, were openly collaborating with China to not censor the search. That would have been even tame. It was to track what people were searching. It was to actually spy on the users of Google China. For this, I think, on behalf of the Chinese government.
Yeah.
They were enabling the totalitarian state. That they, remember Google's slogan up until very recently was "Don't be evil." They removed that because they realized that there's a lot of money in evil.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, God, I'm sorry. We have to hopscotch back to the Kavanaugh situation because we're recording this on Friday night U.S. time, and it just came out. Chuck Grassley tweeted out, and this is confirmed: Judge Kavanaugh, I just granted another extension to Dr. Ford to decide if she wants to proceed with the statement she made last week to testify to the Senate. She should decide so we can move on. I want to hear her. I hope you understand it's not my normal approach to be indecisive.
Okay, so basically exactly what I had told you 30 minutes ago. It says, don't underestimate a Republican's ability to cave and acquiesce.
They are such pussies. Jesus Christ.
What did I tell you? What did I fucking tell you?
What are they waiting for? Judgment Day? Fuck. And if they wait for Judgment Day, God is going to be pissed at them. Okay? I mean, what the fuck, right? I mean, there's no reason to wait around. Oh, man. I mean, and this is a tweet. And by the way, I fucking despise the fact that we're carrying out fucking high politics by way of Twitter. I mean, what the fuck? And that goes to the point that we should just, make sure that Twitter can't fuck with people. Because then they're depriving them of free speech. Absolutely, because everybody's talking on Twitter, of all places. But anyway, what the fuck? There's no reason to delay. Oh, man, this is just so fucking frustrating. They are such pussies. The Republican Party are just a bunch of fucking pussies. They are geldings. Those fuckers, when they were born and they realized at some age that they were like conservative, they took them to the doctor and had their balls chopped off. That's the only fucking explanation. It can't be any other explanation. It cannot be that they joined the Republican Party and there was some program within the Republican Party to give them, castration drugs or some shit like that. No, it must have been a medical procedure when they were young. That's the only explanation for this fucking cowardice of these fucking people. Oh.
So apparently what I'm also hearing now is that she missed the deadline, and now apparently Grassley is giving her one more day. But the thing is, you've already crossed the line here. She ain't gonna get. She's gonna laugh at your fucking one more day. She's gonna be like 5 more days, 10 more days. It doesn't fucking matter. And I know, once a guy caves like that, he'll never not cave. It's always, you either are in a position of not caving or already have caved.
Exactly. There's. The only reason to delay is if there is like a genuine reason, logistically speaking, because somebody happens to be someplace else or something like that. Okay, but shit, I think to the fact that I had an uncle of mine who this is about 25 years ago. He passed away suddenly of a heart attack, right? And his son was a diplomat in China. Working for the Chilean government. And in Chile, when somebody dies, there's an X amount of time that they have to be buried, period. No exceptions. And it doesn't matter who you are or whatever the fuck, exigent circumstances, fuck all that. You have to be buried. And this was, like I said, in the very early 90s. And so flights from China to Chile were not that common. It was a hassle. It was like a 2-day trip, okay? Because you had to fly, I think, from China to the United States and then wait around a bit and then the United States to Chile, right? And there was no way to delay the funeral. And so his oldest son missed the funeral of his father, it was just tragic, But the thing is, see, it's because they had deadlines. They were like, this is the deadline and we don't fucking move them for anybody, for any reason, okay? And that was that, okay? I actually forgot the reason specifically as to why this law exists. I think it has to do with earthquakes and just wanting to tidy up shit after an earthquake because a lot of diseases can spread because of it and blah, blah. But anyway, the point is, see, you're right. If you start to change a deadline, then you don't have a deadline. You have, any deadline becomes arbitrary and therefore just malleable and therefore just change it again. Well, how do you know that by Monday they're going to be saying, okay, another day and another day? It's going to be like Zeno and Achilles. Zeno's paradox, rather. The Achilles and the tortoise. Who's going to get to the fucking finish line first? They're never going to get to the fucking finish line, ever. It's going to be like this endless thing. Oh, man, I'm fucking furious at them because I thought that, on Monday we'd have like some closure at this fucking thing. Either the woman would show up and say her piece, and we'd all get a good chance to look at her and figure out what's what, or we'd get a vote, whatever the fuck. And I'm a great.
Well, remember when we first talked about this? I had said, as soon as the Cory Brookers and the Kamala Harrises were doing their stunts, the smart leadership would have said, "Okay, you want a stunt? Let's do this. We're taking a vote now. We've heard everything. All Republicans vote in unison yes to get him out of the nomination. He gets it. It goes before the Senate. you know what? We don't need to hear any more things. Up or down vote right now. Everybody votes in unison. Oh, look at that. We got our Supreme Court justice in what, 10 minutes?
Yeah.
What do you fucking do? That's the way that you would have done it out of strength.
Yeah.
Because let us not kid ourselves. This isn't an exercise of debate. It hasn't been in a very long time. It hasn't been an exercise in, open, debate for what's good for the country ever since probably the 1820s or the 1830s. Let's give up on that fucking position right now.
No, yeah, I think it's time that we just got hard on these fuckers because I suppose what happens is that I have this democratic impulse to hear everybody and try to come to a generalized consensus. But the way things are being and the way they are behaving, the left, in an insane way, it's time to just crack the whip and fuck them. If they don't like it, fuck them. And just up or down vote. Yeah. Well, look, my only hope is that come November, the Republicans really wipe out, and not just the Republicans, but the dissident Republicans, the hardcore, hard right Republicans, because I'm sick and tired of kowtowing to these fucking people. Because you're right, they constantly kowtow to them. I just don't get it. Why? Why do they constantly kowtow to them? Defer to them, and they're awful people.
Well, here's the truth of the matter. Yes, I do believe they're awful people, but I also believe, the accused should face his accuser, or vice versa. I would drag her by the nostrils because she's got very long ones into the fucking Senate hearing, and not only you're going to testify. Oh, what? Guess who I'm going to have sitting right across the table from you? I'm going to put fucking Judge Kavanaugh right next to you or right in front of you, and you have to look him in the eye when you say it. We'll see how long you fucking last.
Oh, that would be pretty cool. Yeah, because she was saying that, her lawyer was saying that she needed guarantees for her safety. What the fuck is that? Like what? In the Senate, they're going to do something to her? Like somebody's going to leap out?
What guarantees of Senator or Judge Kavanaugh's reputation are going to be there if she turns out to be a lying bitch?
Yeah, exactly. What's going to fix his reputation? Imagine his daughters having to listen to this shit, and they're little, okay? It'll affect them, okay? It'll affect them deeply because nobody wants to hear like horrible shit about their father, especially, these girls. I think that they're prepubescent, right? They're young, they're children. I mean, they're children, right? And to hear these awful things about their father must be fucking heartbreaking and nauseating. And as a parent, if somebody says shit about me, I don't give a shit, right? But if somebody says shit about me, in front of my children, of course it's going to affect me, especially when it's something so disgusting that of course it's going to enrage me.
Think about it. As soon as you're accused, it's with you for the rest of your life. Think of what's our other justice, Clarence Thomas. Sorry, Judge Roberts, Clarence Thomas. Every time I think about him, not every time, but every other thought, I'm like, oh yeah, the pussy hair on the Coke can, or the pubic hair on the Coke can. Not because I believe that necessarily happened one way or the other. It's just because that's the image in my mind of pussy hair on the Coke can. Pussy hair on the Coke can. I mean, and now, Justice Kavanaugh is always going to be like pin her to the bed, Brett, is going to always be associated with
it. Exactly. And so unfair because, I always think of the Anita Hill thing. It's just so much bullshit. I mean, just the worst kind of bullshit imaginable. And I remember at the time, all the feminists just frothing at the mouth over this thing, that they wanted his scalp so bad. And I'll tell you one thing, I remember that. I mean, I was an adult when that shit was going down. There, to me, on the part of the feminists, there was a clear note of racism. It was really creepy and ugly. But the feminists really wanted like the black man to go down. It felt like when he said it's a high-tech lynching, it felt like that, at the time. And I nodded along to that.
That's what saved his ass. That's what saved his ass. I remember, I was alive at the time, but I was a little kid.
Mm-hmm.
But because there was a point in time when I was just very interested in seeing how all these past hearings went down. And I was looking at some of the interesting highlights. And I remember that point, I was listening to the segments and they were all berating him. And then as soon as he said this fucking high tech, well, he didn't use fucking, this high tech lynching, I won't stand for it. It's like, you won the vote because of that statement.
You think so?
I think he did.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think perhaps you're right, because it really did. There was this vibe to him that.
Well, I mean, it was the line that's always used, and I think correctly, by conservative minority conservatives when they say, you know what, when you play along with the game, of course you're the beautiful victim that everybody loves, but as soon as you have the audacity to not play that game, you're just a fucking nigger.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, they treat you like one.
Yeah, they most certainly do. The left, yes, most definitely. Because that's the other thing, like I've met a lot of really conservative people in my time, right? Apart from like fucking around 8chan, 4chan types, right? But like in real life, I have never heard a conservative belittle somebody because of their status as a minority. But I have heard Democrats belittle people because of their status as a minority. Lots of times. Calling them niggers, calling them spics or wetbacks or all the rest of it. Yeah, I have. I can recall specific instances of people who were clearly Democrats or clearly liberals, self-identified liberals, saying the most awful racist shit, right? But the right-wingers, nah. And I've been in the deep South, okay? I've been in like places like Mississippi and Alabama and shit. I mean, like where marrying your first cousin is like marrying outside the family practically. Like, no, I'm telling you, man, it's the Democrats because ultimately that's their thing. I think that's bottom line the issue. That there's a self-loathing to them because in their hearts they are race realists. In their hearts, they believe that the minorities are all inferior, okay? And they feel so guilty about this that they flip it around. You know what I mean? That's my bottom line assessment.
Well, I also think in their heart of hearts, they operate under, and I think I've seen this extensively. It's not even just Democrats. It's broadly speaking, left-wing minded people will generally identify the most base ulterior motive or the most base motive for any opposition to them and use that as justification for basically dialing it up to 11.
Yeah.
An characteristic response. This is why, I laugh at the likes of, again, Ben, I always bring him up, Ben Shapiro, when he says like, oh, you just need to be reasoned debate. Is that your opponents are always looking to identify the worst case reason as to why you disagree with them, and will use that to attack you. That's why the ad hominem is very easy for them. That's why it's like, well, he was just a white fucking privileged man, or all of that other bullshit. It's because let's put it this way, if this is all back to projection. What you would do in that situation, you assume others do the same thing. If they operate under the assumption that you're opposing them because of the most base motives, it reveals that they operate on the most base motive.
Exactly right.
Which is why I brought it up. I feel like this has become the theme of this episode, because if you stack up over the course of a week all the bullshit that happens, especially if it's a week that may not be the most entertaining or enjoyable for our side.
Yeah, you
just get this. Like I said, it comes back to the sense that, are these kids who just really like to pull the wings off of flies? Are these the kids who would step on a wounded animal just to see what would happen?
Well, here's the thing. You say that it's been a bad week for our side. I actually think it's a good week for our side, because it's the left has been showing their hand more grossly and grotesquely than ever, and I think that because of that, because they've been so obvious about what they're doing, that the normies are catching on, and I think that there's more and more people are joining our side because they're realizing that what they're being told is just so much bullshit. And I think that the more blatant they are, the more egregious their hypocrisy, the more it benefits our side. The more people are like, wait a second here. Hold your goddamn fucking horses here. And I think that that's a fundamentally good thing. You see what I'm saying?
I do. On some level, I do, but I think I have to mitigate against this optimism with the realization that our leaders don't operate under the assumption that that is the case. Just look at this caving by Grassley. If Grassley, but what I mean, I'm going to make a bigger point about it. Do you think Grassley would have still operated under that position if he truly saw and believed that people see through this bullshit? He's operating on the assumption that most people don't. I thought I saw a poll earlier this week. I heard it on the radio. God knows if it's real or where it comes from. So assume it's fake. But the poll itself exists, so you can accept that. It said, most Americans now are against the nomination of Brett Kavanaugh because clearly when some woman talks, it's true. That kind of shit is what's motivating him. It's not what you and I are seeing every day. The increasing disillusionment with these core talking points of what it means to be a good citizen in a liberal democracy. These guys don't see that. And the problem is it's not enough people on our side who do see that who find themselves in leadership positions.
Well, yeah, I think that the issue that not enough of our side is on the leadership positions, yeah, absolutely true. And we got to fix that somehow. But I don't know. I think that, tactically short term, you might see this past week as like a sort of like an L on our side. There wasn't an outright loss, but I think that overall on the strategic level, it was a win because it's just advancing the overall narrative that the government and the mainstream media are so not just liberal, but just insane liberal. They're progressive, quote unquote, progressive in the nastiest way possible, and they shut up people like they shut up James Woods, and they try to fuck with people like the Google guys, and they try to smear spotless individuals like what Ford is doing to Judge Kavanaugh, and I think that it's convincing the normies. And by the way, also, there's something else that, when you floated the idea that we're headed towards civil war, that was like several months ago, right? And slowly I've come to the acceptance of that. But now I'm coming to the point of sort of actively proselytizing it because I'm realizing this does not have a happy ending. This greater and greater polarization of the country inevitably is going to lead to some catastrophe, to some sort of civil war of some sort. Some kind of cleansing by fire. And I think that it would actually be a good thing, quite frankly, that, to have it clear as to which side is the winning side. Is it going to be the progressives and the liberals, the Ouroboros leftists who are going to, basically, they're going to impose some sort of socialist dictatorship in America. Okay. Is it going to be that side? Or is it going to be, a more decentralized, sort of like pastoral kind of, and individually militaristic peoples like our side. I think that's the end game here. And how can I put it? When you first floated the idea of potential for a civil war, I thought it was kind of absurd. And then I thought it was an interesting thought experiment. And then I thought, maybe it's possible. Maybe it could happen. But I guess as of late, I've just been becoming more and more convinced that it will happen. Because I don't see a way for the progressives to walk back from the edge of the cliff of their insanity. Because from my point of view, it seems to me that it's the left that's pushing forward towards insanity. It doesn't seem to me that the right is pushing anything particularly noxious or crazy. It's the left and its urge to repress and control that is just driving the whole society towards that civil war. And I do not see what could happen to walk this back, to pull back, unless it were some sort of outside crises of enormous magnitude, something along the lines of 9/11 2.0. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
I can't see something that would dial it down. And so, since I can't see anything that would dial it down, it's just going to continue to dial up because it's dialing up day by day. We are starting to see something that 5 years ago would have been unimaginable. The notion that within the government there are actors who are actively trying to overthrow the will of the duly elected president. 5 years ago, 2 years ago, I mean, before Trump came to office, that would have been unimaginable. And now on the cover of the New York fucking Times, we have proof of this. Okay? I mean, holy shit. We're rapidly moving in that direction of open civil war. And I don't think that anybody seems to understand what it's about. And what it's about, it's like all civil wars, it's economic. One group of people just forged ahead and another large segment has been left behind, and the left behinders are just not happy with it. And I think it's the people who forged ahead. They're guilty, and they are. I think that they're guilty. By the way, I think that the leftists are very, very guilty, and they try to mask that guilt. I don't know if I'm talking out of my ass insofar as that issue. You tell me if you think I'm talking out of my ass, but I think
Well, I
that
mean,
they're guilty.
I've already mentioned the idea that they're really they're fundamentally operating from a position of, like I said, base motives. But
You can't
in
think
order
that
in
part of
order
it
to
might be guilt.
guilt in what way?
Well, because it's quite obvious that the white working class population has been totally decimated over the last, I don't know, 20 years. It's just been totally destroyed. There's no manufacturing jobs. I mean, all the policies that the Clinton administration implemented and that Bush and Obama continued have just been so destructive to the American working class. Everything that Ross Perot said in 1992 came to pass. And now you have large swaths of the population that are decimated. You have Detroit and other cities in the Rust Belt that look like, like after the Second World War in Europe. I mean, they're just hollow shells of cities. They're just destroyed. And worse than in war-torn Europe, there are no people to rebuild. Those places are just destroyed and gone and forgotten, and that's that, right? Don't you feel that maybe the left recognizes it and they feel guilty because of it, and like when you're guilty, you look
I've never.
away and you kick dirt at the object that makes you feel guilty.
I mean, it's certainly possible, but I'll tell you this: I've never seen a tear last from a crying liberal eye on this matter. Uh,
No,
it's just gonna. Well,
I
first
have
off, no,
several books about it, about a lot of liberals who are like really deeply upset about it, and who have written about it extensively. Okay, I'm reading one now. I'm reading the Thomas Frank, The Rendezvous with Oblivion, which
well, I
is
mean, the man's an exception. I mean, I'm thinking explicitly about the people in my life who have expressed liberal positions, who are very adamant about it,
hmm
and who have actually been physically confronted with the economic results of what they participated in some sense precipitated.
hmm
So people in finance, people in consulting. I told you the story of my truly liberal friends. At least they vote that way, and they're not really my friends, coworkers.
yeah, people
This is
yeah.
who literally looked down at the Occupy protesters of people who were frankly just asking for a fucking job.
Mm.
Like, oh, why don't these people just spend as much time looking for a job as they do protesting? I mean, that's basically let them eat cake of our generation.
Yeah.
I've seen that, and I even seen it. There's a kid I used to work with. I know him very well because he was in the office literally next to mine, and he was my quote unquote onboarding. He was the ultimate Burning Man attending guy. Really talk about ethics, this, that, and the other. And he was actually the guy who introduced me to that Mike Dorsey video about Apple. He made that fake Apple story about like I visited Foxconn in China
hmm
where they make the tablets, and it turned out he was bullshitting half of it. I know that kid's working for Amazon now. He's working in I believe in the Echo group or something related to it.
Mm-hmm.
And, he's going gung-ho, working for a company which is actively continuing to undermine a big swath of the American country. And I've talked to him about it. I remember when we were friends, I told him about his double standards, and he just, he'll cry about it for a minute and then will operate as if it never happened.
Mm.
And he's even he's the more self-aware of the people I know. Most people don't even give a shit. You think there's any tears that people have when they pick up their iPhone and they figure out what the fuck went into actually making it? Do you think they really consider the suicide prevention nets over these fucking compounds that are making it?
Yeah.
You think if they don't give a shit about that, the great yellow people, the wonderful yellow people, you think they're going to even consider thinking about it for a guy who they often will consider as, oh, some yokel who always sounds like this, not worth your time, doing that dismissive parody of a Southern accent, even if it's some guy in like Indiana or some guy in Michigan or some guy in Wisconsin? You think that they have anything close to human decency to even consider guilt an option? No, they don't. This is me talking about my class again, but I guarantee you I deal with people who, even if they weren't born sociopaths, are trained to be sociopaths on some level. You're trained not to care. You're encouraged not.
I think it could be the growth of the, this individualistic thing that has been inculcated, of the dismissal of all familial relationships, the worship of the individual over everything else, and and the dismissal of any kind of notion of a common good or a tribal good or familial good, the dismissal of sacrifice for the sake of your family or your tribe or your country, the dismissal of it, or the empty glorification of it, because they always say that, the military, they sacrifice so much for the country, but that's just empty platitudes. That's just so much bullshit. Nobody gives a shit. They just say it to look good. It's a form of virtue signaling. The real sacrifices for a family, for your extended family, your tribe, no, that's just dismissed. It's all about you. Any sacrifice you make, it should be for your sake, not for the sake of anybody else. And I think that ultimately raises psychopaths, creates psychopaths. Well,
even in the think about even in the things they like. Remember, we always joke. I mean, the millennial woes comment. It's like all of the endless, diversity of restaurants. But think about that. Think about the real meaning behind that. And I know, people say I'll come across as like Democrats, the real racist, but think about it for what they're really saying. What they're really saying is even their pet projects, they're the little minorities. What are they? Your food product.
Yeah.
Deliver this fucking food that I can't make on my own. Don't you feel happy about that?
Yeah.
Don't you feel happy that I'm letting you in here because I like your fucking churros?
Oh, God. Yeah. That is just so fucking evil. Yeah. If you think about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. On that black pilled as fuck note, I think we should call it a podcast.
It's the Weekly Bile. I mean, I feel like this is my chance to give those.
Yeah, I mean, like if you think about it, the name of the show gives it away. Okay, I mean, if you expected, unicorns and rainbows, you came to the wrong fucking show. So just eat shit and die if that's what you were expecting. But if you were expecting just black pilled oblivion, you're welcome.
Hey, well, if you don't want me talking about movies, I got plenty more black pills to give you.
So on that gleefully cheerful note, this has been the Coach and Benway's podcast, the Weekly Bile. I'm Coach Red Pill, signing off for my esteemed colleague, Dr. Benway, and we will see you next time.
Well, I don't know if we could see you next time. I may need an extension on that.